I guess I'll attempt to drive, but feel free to just like interrupt me
Just
or
take the wheel.
add or take the.
Shut up,
that's
Jared.
All right, well, welcome to On Your Left, new and exciting podcast. I'm Jared,
I'm Kobina, or you can call me Kobe for short.
and we'll get into our lore, probably not in this episode, but that'll come in a future episode of how we met and how this podcast even came to be. Mainly, we're going to talk about Marvel. I feel like that's going to be our meat and potatoes, but, you know, you can't have meat and potatoes for every meal, so, like... We'll dive into some other stuff. We might want to talk about Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, which is actually super relevant right now. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We are going to talk about Marvel today, and we're going to dive right in. We have a lot we want to talk about in this first episode, which is basically called Mutants, because we're loosely going to talk about mutants today in a variety of ways. We're going to review Deadpool and Wolverine, which came out literally, it was a week ago today.
It was a week ago.
You and I were at the premiere.
We literally, about 10, 15 minutes from now is when the lights started to dim.
That's right. So we'll discuss that. We will talk about the huge Doctor Doom announcement that came out at San Diego Comic-Con, which I feel like really suddenly started to overshadow all the Deadpool news because that was a big deal. And we'll also talk about how Kevin Feige also recently announced that Phase 7 is officially going to be the Mutant Saga, and we have a list of tentative projects and films that will be coming up for that. Before we get into that, though, I think we want to level set. Kobe and I were talking about, you know, what we want this podcast to be about. We kind of agreed that we want to discuss these movies and shows and projects in general and tackle critics versus audiences versus public opinions. We're not here to necessarily, you know, shit on any movies because we don't really believe that there are any bad MCU movies, right? We kind of talked about that.
Yes. I will die on that hill.
Exactly.
And we'll explain more later.
Yeah, we also like to, going off that kind of, we have the firm belief that, or we want to debunk, is it true that all MCU movies are either awful or awesome? We don't really think that's true. There's definitely middle ground all around. So
there has to be.
So now that we've level set, I think we need to start with Deadpool and Wolverine while it is still very fresh. So before we get into our kind of thoughts and opinions, I'm going to throw some numbers at you, Kobe. We're going to talk about how it did opening weekend.
Woo-hoo.
And it's actually really interesting because initially, I think it was on Sunday, they were estimating that it was going to do 205 million domestically opening weekend. On Monday, there was an update. They're like, nope, it surpassed that. It's at 211 million, which that's a pretty big deal.
And just so people are clear, because I feel like this doesn't get clarified enough. When they're talking about that opening box office, they are talking about Thursday previews and then Friday and Saturday. That's why they start to report this on Sunday. And usually it comes out super early because they have most of the numbers and they can kind of project. And yeah, they said 205, which again blows the R-rated debut out of the water for any movie, not just Marvel or anything like that. They were kind of expecting it was going to beat projections. I don't think anybody thought they were going to eclipse 200 million, so that's outstanding.
I mean, there's very few, I think there's less than 10 movies that have done that.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So to officially be on that list, I mean, huge props.
And then, of course, getting that extra bump is like, okay, it was even a bit more crazy than we expected. Obviously, the theaters were filling up all weekend. I personally went
twice.
2 showings. I went on Thursday night, and then I also went on Friday night. And each time it was an incredible atmosphere. And what more can you say?
Right.
Dreams came true.
Yeah, seriously.
Plain and simple.
So yeah, to smash that $200 million ceiling, first of all, as you said, biggest R-rated opening ever. And the second is the original Deadpool, and it's not even close. It's 132 million. It's like, that gap is just huge. And then Deadpool 2 now officially dropped to the third slot. What I think is amazing about the beating the projections of 205 and getting 211 opening weekend is that this puts this at number 4 as far as opening weekends go among the Marvel movies, with below it you have the original Avengers at 207. So originally it was thought to be below original Avengers, and it just edged out the original Avengers, which I think is, I mean, the original Avengers is a fantastic movie. Still one of my favorite movies to this day. So that is just insane. So the original Avengers below it, and then this is why I took your script away briefly, and I'll give it back to you now, because now we have the top 3. I want you, just for fun, to guess what you think the top 3 are. I feel like you'll get this pretty easily.
Oh, for opening ever?
Marvel movies, top 3.
Yeah, so Endgame, obviously. Infinity War, obviously.
But what's 3? I knew you'd get those 2 without.
I'm gonna go with No Way Home.
It was No Way Home.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
No Way Home's 2. It edged out Infinity War by like 2 million.
And that's insane.
That is insane.
In and of itself. To do that after Infinity War and Endgame, the excitement goes down a little bit. It's not as big of an event film, even though some would argue just as big of an event film based on what they did in that movie.
And then I never actually knew how much Endgame made in its opening weekend. It made $357 million. That's a stupid amount of money.
And I think they were projecting, they were saying this might be the first 300 ever, maybe like 320. And then for it to go over 350 is insanity.
Right. It's going to be a long time, certainly before Marvel does that ever again.
Yes.
I don't know about other movies.
It's going to be hard.
But
it's going to be hard. It's a perfect kind of amount of circumstances to pull that off.
So those are just some initial numbers.
So that's why I took a
That's why I took that was the only question I had. But still, I was like, you're going to get this for sure.
Yeah.
Like, I thought No Way Home might throw you for a curve, but that being said, I was also in the theater with you for that too. And I mean, I get it. That was such a great experience as well. Kobe and I are both in a group of people that pretty much almost exclusively go on opening night.
And there's a big reason for that. Unfortunately, in this day and age, with the way social media is, things just leak, things get spoiled, and maybe they don't get spoiled before the movie comes out. But as you get to Thursday and you get to opening night Friday and you get through the weekend, more and more things leak, more things get talked about, whether it's intentional or unintentionally. And so one of the big things we love about going is that we're experiencing it for the first time. We've usually no like spoilers. Everything's a surprise. Everything's fresh. And it's a great feeling when, 20 minutes in the movie, 40 minutes in the movie, there's that scene and then you're just like, oh my God. And like, it's a great experience, and you get to feel that energy and excitement with everybody. And that's one of the big reasons that I like to, and I'm sure you like to, and I think our group likes to do that and try and go on Thursday or Friday, because you get that experience every single time.
And it's the theater's full of people who also like really want to be there.
They're just like you.
I mean, actually, specifically for this movie, I mean, our group was sitting behind a really fun group of people. I don't know who instigated. Oh, I think you instigated the other interaction, because one of the guys in front of us was wearing a SHIELD t-shirt.
It was pretty sus. He just walked in with a SHIELD shirt, nothing else, kind of quiet, trying to keep to himself. So I was just like, "You're Hydra, aren't you? Don't even." And then the perfect answer is just like, "Can't tell you that."
Yeah, no, they have like you said, they're just like us. They have that same nerdy attitude. They want to be there. They're excited to be there. So I love it. And then going back to spoilers, I feel like I've been personally very fortunate. I think the last time I had a movie spoiled for me was The Force Awakens. That was a long.
That happened to you too?
Yeah. Well, because again, I was dressing up. Our whole group was dressing up, which I loved, and I was dressing up as Han Solo, and I was trying to like remake his pants. So I was just trying to Google Han Solo pants, and I typed in Han Solo, and I got, spoiler if you haven't seen the movie yet, but I got Han Solo death or something like that, and I was just like, what?
Was it a picture of him with the lightsaber going through him?
No, it was literally just the suggestion on Google, and I'm like, okay, someone's not doing their job.
Because for me, it was scrolling, and then somebody had said, just got a sneak peek of the ending of the movie, and then there was a screenshot of that scene, and I was just like, are you serious right now?
Yeah.
Like, putting that online? The excitement for that movie was probably rivaling most of the blockbuster experiences had over like the last 10 years. All
right, so back to Deadpool and Wolverine. As far as thoughts on the movie, we're gonna start pretty casually and work up to serious reviews and thoughts. First of all, I was pretty disappointed. I think we both were, because we were talking about this during the previews. We didn't get a Captain America Civil War trailer in IMAX. I know we've both already seen that trailer, obviously, and talked about it, and it looks amazing. But seeing that in IMAX would have been fantastic. Did you get it on Friday? You son of a... No way.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. So on Thursday, I was expecting to see the new Captain America trailer because it had been released the week prior. So I was like, I love seeing it on the big screen. And they didn't show it at all, which I kind of know why now, but I was kind of devastated. I was like, that's going to be part of the Marvel movie experience tonight. We didn't get it. So on Friday, and it's funny, I was talking to Jason about it, who I went to go see the movie with, and I said, yeah, they didn't show this trailer, so I don't know what the deal is, but maybe they're just not going to show it. And then, of course, the last trailer they show before the movie starts was the Captain America trailer.
Come on.
The reason that I think they didn't show it on Thursday, this is my speculation, unfortunately, because of sometimes fiction mirrors reality too much, there's a scene in the trailer, if you haven't seen it yet, where the President of the United States is shot at.
Okay.
And so there was big discourse on the internet about, are they going to like alter the trailer? Because like we just had an assassination attempt recently. And a lot of people had seemed to indicate that, nah, it's not a big deal. They're going to show in its entirety. Well, I think they just wanted to be cautious, so they altered it slightly. They took that little screen grab out of there, and it got replaced with something a little different.
Okay.
And I think what I'm guessing is they didn't have it ready to go on Thursday. But yeah, it was rolling on Friday. It got a great reception, and I did notice that that scene was gone. And I was like, okay, so they decided they didn't want to rock the boat.
That totally makes sense, but I mean, please don't tell me you also got a Thunderbolts trailer.
No.
Because, that we were both... I know Kobe leaned over to me during the trailer previews and was like, what if we got a Thunderbolts trailer right now?
That would have been...
That would be nuts.
The cherry on top.
Right. Did you get the open mouth
bucket? Got the open mouth Wolverine bucket, and I admire the buckets for a lot of the movies that come out. I don't usually get them. I think to date, I'd only ever gotten one other bucket.
Okay, you always debate them.
I debate them in length, but this one was like iconic. It's like I had to have it. The bucket itself is it's Wolverine's face / head. It's going facing upward, and his mouth is wide open, and that's where you grab the popcorn from. And then on the side, it does say designed by... I'm sorry. Designed by Deadpool, but then in even smaller letters, it says... can be used for popcorn as well.
That's right. I forgot about that. That is, I feel like if you're going to get one, I feel like you got to get that one. There was apparently a Cinemark Theater exclusive one that was Dopinder's Cab with Deadpool sitting on the top, which it doesn't play a factor in this movie at all.
Right. I'm a little sad we didn't get his cab.
A little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It is kind of iconic, though, so I would have maybe considered that one, too. Speaking of, like, what was and wasn't in the movie, I guess I never discussed this before we turned our mics on. My thought was, when talking about the movie here, to not necessarily... avoid spoilers, but we're not going to sit here and recite the whole frickin' movie.
Oh, absolutely not, yeah.
So, but there probably will be some minor spoilers in here. We'll try to point them out, I guess, as we discuss here, because our next topic is just reactions and discussing this movie. I think there's a lot to just get into. Did you want to take us away, maybe, or anywhere you want to start?
Yeah, and like Jared said, generally, if we talk about a movie, if you haven't seen it yet, maybe just avoid. We're not going to rehash the entire movie, but we're going to bring up things that will definitely spoil some things for you. And let's just start off right away. We'll start off with Wolverine. Hugh Jackman's back, and he said it was going to take a lot for him to come back and do this, and he came back. So that immediately tells you that they brought it for this. And I think there's several ways that they wanted to be different with this performance. Obviously, a comic book accurate suit, just bringing that to life. And they did it in several ways. There's actually several suits you see in this.
Yes.
There's the main one that you see, and then there's a couple blink and you miss it opportunities for different suits.
The suit looked phenomenal. He talks about, for a large part of the movie, like basically why we've never seen him in the suit. And I feel like he kind of builds on that, and he kind of talks about how he just always despised it and what it stood for, and just in a very much Wolverine fashion, like that's stupid. I'm not a team member or a team player. I'm here to do my own thing. And just to I feel like him putting on the mask was the final flip of like, no, I know what I'm all about and what I got to be about, and it was kind of stupid of me to to be doing what I was doing in the past.
Yeah.
So this is me fully committing. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that scene! Wow.
So then, another thing for pure Wolverine fans, just talking about the action and intensity of Wolverine. So we've seen that side of him in several movies. We've also had a couple opportunities to see him in our in an R setting. We had Logan, obviously. Though Wolverine was probably the most intense overall, but even that was muted in a sense. In this movie, language, intensity, ferociousness, it all got dialed up to 11.
Oh, yeah.
He gets a couple scenes to shine where he is literally going off on people. They do not skimp on the violence.
No. Oh, gosh.
They don't let him hold back. He drops F-bombs. He does not care. The anger is on display. It all comes together.
Pure Wolverine. I mean, he's phenomenal.
It is absolutely phenomenal. The new, I would say new Wolverine action in the sense that they do a couple things that like you probably wanted to see, but they just haven't executed fully on. He does it. Whether they're fighting each other or they're fighting somebody else working together, the Wolverine Deadpool scenes really shine.
Yeah.
And it's not a bunch of like cutting away, like multiple cuts in a couple seconds. Like there's some long takes of some really well put together scenes that are gonna make you scream and then probably squeal a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I don't know how you felt about, for example, the car sequence when that kind of how that sort of built up.
Ooh.
Like that stands out for me in terms of like they like took it to another level.
They did, yeah.
Because
they did.
the first fight was phenomenal. The second fight was brutal.
Yes. I think brutal is the right word for it. Like, I feel like the most blood we've ever seen in any of one of these movies.
Oh, by far.
Honestly.
It's not particularly close.
If blood is not your thing, you are gonna have some moments in this movie.
Yeah.
I would like to watch that scene again. Oh my God. They're definitely both releasing a lot of emotion, and so if you are trying to think about how that would realistically go, if you had two guys who are essentially can't die or heal from all their injuries, who are just pissed off at each other and start going, like they're never going to come down, or it's going to take a long time for them to
Wolverine
come down.
It doesn't come down easily,
Yeah.
and I think Deadpool is never back down from a challenge.
Exactly.
And he gets pushed to the limit kind of all over the board, physically, emotionally. Like there's a lot going on in this movie.
I think that's the key to the emotional part, because I feel like Wolverine was already there and already had that potential to just be in a fight like that just lasted so long. They really make Wade, you get some feels from Wade in this movie. He faces a lot. He's always kind of in this already permanent state of pain. Because when he got his powers, it didn't heal him fully. It just stopped him where he was. So he is technically just regenerating still some somewhat dead cells. So he is constantly in pain, and that's partly why he
and that probably doesn't get emphasized enough that he's kind of living in that state perpetually, and while he won't die, and while he has this ability to regenerate, ability to fight probably longer than anybody. He's in pain probably the entire time.
And so that his humor that we love is a way of kind of distracting him from it or expressing that. I think when he is with Vanessa, I feel like love is a way he can kind of distract himself from it. But in that moment, in that fight, I mean, there was none of that, and he was just faced with, I think, kind of who he was, and was like, you know what, fuck it, and just released it all and took it out that way. So I think it is a very realistic scene, very well done scene. That is now going to be an iconic scene, like the
the Honda Odyssey.
The Honda Odyssey
for all you minivan lovers out there.
Those are my thoughts on that scene.
I definitely want to highlight, as we're talking about Wade a bit more.
Yeah,
I think it's important in these movies that the story comes through as well. And I just want to say overall, all three movies, I think that's an underrated part of what makes the Deadpool movies tick. The story resonates each time.
Yes.
And this is no different. Bringing in Wolverine's a big risk, especially given the circumstances. But bringing them together in their time of need in this movie and how that story resonates is really well done. I don't think that should be underappreciated at all, because they could have just brought him back and really just kind of done the whole action movie fan service and just kind of like, it's an okay story, but whatever. I think it's really meaningful in the context of this movie, I think they accomplished a lot of different things at once with it too.
Yes.
And I want to highlight that, like, they did an excellent job of that. I know a lot of other things will be emphasized, but that was a highlight for me.
And especially because I don't think anyone's assuming, going into the movie that this is what's going to happen. But if you are, it's not a movie where, like, at the very beginning, Deadpool finds Wolverine and was just like, I need your help. And Wolverine's like, absolutely, buddy. No. It's a fight to get him, on board, and not just with Deadpool, with every other character that we interact with, so we get, this is peak Wolverine. He is not happy to be there. He kind of just wanted to be left in his drunken stupor, and he basically tries to continue that as long as possible.
Yeah.
He even drinks rubbing alcohol at one point because that's all he can find, and he's just trying to be in that state and I think kind of crush himself that way. So to see that arc and to see, the resolution of that, and the hints along the way of like, oh, are we going to need to see a third act flashback to get you on board, or what's the deal here? I loved that. I would have just loved to see more from the flashbacks. They were left a lot to the imagination.
They were a bit
I feel
more
like
vague and sort of wanted you to fill in the blanks. Bit.
And you get the gist of what you need to know from what we see.
Yeah.
But I think it would have been nice to see just a little bit more, especially because the flashbacks are definitely related to those emotional events that are fueling Wolverine in particular. And so I feel like maybe just for me, I'm a very visual person, so to see just that a little bit more. But overall, I mean, I don't have a ton of complaints about this movie, honestly. I do think people's main concern was that it would ruin the ending of Logan and what happened in Logan. I think we can both agree that's not the case.
That ending gets to live on, and it gets honored in this movie in a couple of different ways, but they definitely play off of that to kind of advance the story.
I also think they do it really well in that they tease that it is going to play off of the Logan ending. They tease it just a little bit, and then suddenly it's like, nope, never mind, it's not going to happen. And then we get the very now famous, or very quickly becoming famous, bye scene.
Oh my goodness!
That's not a spoiler. If you don't know that bye is not a huge part of this movie yet. Where have you been? Also, you should know now, because on any streaming service now, they changed the name of Bye to Bye dash from Deadpool and Wolverine soundtrack. And that's the best thing I've seen all week.
Yeah, it truly is one of, I'm just going to say top 10 opening sequence.
Oh, absolutely.
Just without even thinking about other ones. But, like, it's up there for just entertainment value, the song, the visuals of what's going on. It is fantastic.
Do you think it's a better opening sequence than the original Deadpool? Because I feel like when people think of the original Deadpool, they think of that opening sequence on the bridge.
They're very different.
That's very true.
Because that one is very visually appealing.
That's true.
With every single tagline and what they show is so well done.
That is very good.
Versus this one incorporating music to a battle scene.
True.
And some dancing as well.
That's true.
Like,
there's really no dancing.
I will say I'll still take Deadpool as number one, because again, a big reason why that movie even was made was because of the test footage that was released.
Yes.
And then of course they're like, all right, well now we got to juice it up because we're actually making this movie. And that opening scene is a big part of like, we gotta highlight what we showed people and really like make that pop, right? And I love how you weave in through the car and you're seeing all these different things, and it's like every time you see something you just laugh out loud, and then you see it again you laugh some more. And
they do such a great job in both scenes with weaving in the fourth wall breaks. Like, did I leave the stove on? Or, oh yeah, I bet you're wondering how I got this movie. Well, I got some bad guys to kill, and then like we'll talk about that later. Very well done. Does not ruin Logan, I think, is the overall theme here. I don't think you can make a case that it does at all.
Yeah. Should we bring in the big cameos?
We could talk about some cameos. I do kind of want to talk about the cameos. Okay. So we're going to talk about some cameos now. So be warned. But all right. I want to talk about them.
So I would say the big three in terms of unexpected cameos comes about midway through the movie.
Yes.
And that is the trio of Jennifer Garner, Wesley Snipes, and Channing Tatum. Jennifer Garner as Elektra, Wesley Snipes as Blade, and then we got Channing Tatum finally as Gambit. Which,
that was awesome.
If you don't know the story there, that is the classic example of development hell.
I had to go read about that a little bit more.
It's insane. And again, the movie never happened, so we never really got to experience the character, the take, the vision. Channing Tatum still talks about it to this day, about how he just, the process really crushed him.
Because it was initially greenlit, right?
It was greenlit several times.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a situation... now, again, they had to like postpone it, go back into production, writing, what have you. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of got... Right around the time they were starting a new wave of X-Men movies, it just kind of like never got off the ground.
Yeah.
And then I think he just had to move on. I think the studio had to move on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we got him. And it was fantastic.
And now I feel like people are going to be screaming for a standalone Gambit movie with Channing Tatum, honestly.
It's not too late to make it happen.
No, I think he did a great job.
The whole Elektra thing, too, it's fun to kind of go back to that period. She was in Daredevil first, which they had a hilarious joke about Daredevil in the movie, too. But she was in Daredevil first, and, you know, say what you want about whether or not we should love or hate that iteration, but it was acclaimed enough that we got a spinoff for her, and that's where things went south with that franchise or whatever, if they hadn't already gone south.
Yes.
But I think universally people loved her as the character, so it was really nice to see that.
I have not seen her original performance. I thought she did great, though, in this movie.
Oh, my God.
And yes. I also had to go and read more up on the whole Wesley Snipes stuff, which I saw an interview with him recently where he was like, it actually, like, there was never any beef between us.
There was never beef.
We've just been, like, saying that this entire time. But he was talking about when he was asked to do this movie. Basically, it was like, I got a call from, Ryan Reynolds, and I haven't talked to the guy in 20 years. And when you get a call from Ryan Reynolds after 20 years of not hearing from him, you're kind of like, I got to see what this is about.
Right.
Answers the phone. And I think he thought at the very beginning that it wasn't actually going to happen. But he was like, you know what, if you get it done, sure, I'll come back and do it. And then he got the call like, oh yeah, they're on board if you're on board. And he was like, all right, let's do this. So I think he did a really good job as well. That squad, I mean, when
the way they roll in too,
the way they roll
definitely
in,
one of those theater
scene.
goes crazy moments.
That's a good scene.
And then that kind of scene is bookended by getting Daphne Keane back as X-23,
right?
Which we did. If you watched the last trailer, you knew that she was going to pop up.
Yeah, I feel like that's been pretty well known,
and it was heavily speculated.
But again, it's not quite the X-23 we know. But it is still great to see that reunion and to see that dynamic then actually of her talking with Wolverine.
Such a highlight of Logan.
Yes.
Just such a highlight, their relationship, which is mainly nonverbal, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
How good that relationship.
She doesn't even have that many speaking roles, especially with him, but when she does, they hit. She knows how to talk to him. It's so crazy to see, especially because she's such a young character. So those are the main cameos.
Yeah, two others I want to highlight real quick.
Yeah.
So in the beginning of the movie, there's a bit of a montage because he really wants to find a Wolverine
hunting.
There's
reasons for that.
Leave it at that. Yeah. But one of the Wolverines they do come across is none other than your favorite Superman, Henry Cavill.
Right.
Dubbed the Cavalry.
The Cavalry.
And I got to tell you, so first of all, he's still jacked. Absolutely ridiculously jacked. Yeah. And you see him from behind, and obviously you're like...
At first.
You're thinking it's probably just Hugh Jackman, but like whoever it is, they look good, right? They're in like the classic white tank top.
Oh, yeah.
And he turns around, and you're just like, oh my... Yeah. Like, I think Deadpool even says it, too.
Yeah.
Like, it's Henry Cavill with the chops. He's got the cigar. Woo!
And so that was a big fan-supported casting, right? Okay, people wanted to see that. And that would be a good... I mean, he would make a good Wolverine.
Yes, he would.
It's tough because Hugh Jackman has just, made the character his own for sure.
That was so much
that is funny. Like, that moment was what? He was on screen for 10 seconds maybe or something?
Yeah.
But someone's like, we got to do this.
We got to do it. And he said, oh, yeah, I'm game for this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what do you need me to do? So it was perfectly done. And then one other thing I want to say about the cameo.
Yeah.
If you've seen... I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's Rogue Nation. That doesn't sound right. Fallout. If you've seen Mission Impossible Fallout, he plays a character in that movie, and one of his iconic moments in that movie is he does the arm reload. He totally does that in this scene.
I missed that.
He did that to get his claws out.
The claws out.
He does it, and I was just like, "Oh my god,
that is awesome!"
Yeah, so he does the
again.
fist reload with the claws, and then, I mean,
oh my
beautiful
gosh,
scene.
Okay.
So
Fantastic.
yeah, that will definitely pop out to you when you see that next time.
Love that. Another cameo in that same series or chain of events where he's looking for a Wolverine. We run into another Wolverine that is still Hugh Jackman, but he's extremely short. And I didn't realize that
comic accurate.
Yes,
Wolverine.
I didn't realize that it's the comic accurate Wolverine who's supposed to be 5'6".
Back when they did the first couple X-Men movies, a lot of the public discourse was complaining about how Hugh Jackman was too tall to play Wolverine because Wolverine's supposed to be this short, squat guy. So, of course, they're like, all right, well, let's just show him how ridiculous this is.
That would be, yeah.
So, we meet a Wolverine. Cool, it's Hugh. Mm-hmm. He jumps off of his stool, and I mean jumps.
Yeah,
he jumps down off the stool, and, let's be generous. Maybe he was 5 feet.
Yeah, they exaggerated for sure.
Little short king down there looking good, but, there was a large... sort of cheer / groan from the audience because it was just we all know it's been talked about for years, but to see it was kind of ridiculous.
I think those are all good cameos to hit. There are definitely more, and we don't need to hit on them unless you have specific notes you wanted to hit. But I think we'll
just
save
the one.
I
Before he was Captain America, he was somebody else.
He was, and
there's a Chris Evans sighting.
There's a Chris Evans sighting, and
he got Johnny's door.
That's all we'll say.
I think that's we can.
The capacity and how we won't talk about the capacity and what you get and how much time we get. Stay after credits. There is an end credits scene. He's included in it, and you should stay for it because it is hilarious.
In that vein, mid-credits scene. If you were a fan of the X-Men, fan of Fox, fan of Fantastic Four, just a fan of that era of the Marvel Universe, they do a nice little homage to kind of celebrate what they accomplished, which, before we had the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is what we had, and it was fantastic.
Yes, and
honestly, a lot of great work was done, a lot of great people, a lot of great actors and actresses, and just it built the foundation for what we have now.
Overall, though, I mean, I need to see it again to get over the just... not nostalgia, but there was so much anticipation for this movie, and I personally love Deadpool. He's one of my favorite heroes. And the homage at the end is very nice because I don't think we're going to see Wolverine again. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I don't think we're going to see him featured quite like that again.
They try to tee it up at the end. They probably knew that was a question everyone was
That's why I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they try to tee it up, and Wolverine basically shuts it down.
And I think it's smart to do that.
Yes.
Because I don't know... we can speculate on the plans for the future going into the next era of Marvel movies. I think celebrating Hugh Jackman as this character and what he's done is extraordinary. A lot of people talk about what Robert Downey Jr. has done and Chris Evans has done, and we've had several iterations of some iconic characters, but Hugh Jackman has done this for a long time and seemingly stepped away, was willing to come back. I don't know how much longer he can actually do it or how much he wants to do it.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean we can't have Wolverine on the big screen. But, I would be inclined to say that it's unlikely we're going to see him featured the way he was in this movie. I certainly could see him back in some capacity. Maybe a little bit more in a cameo, but less than a supporting character for sure.
By the way, I heard this story a couple days ago. Did you know that the movie had a different title originally?
Yeah, I had a friend tell me that. And
Friend?
So basically, as the story goes, the previous title was leaked, I think, a day before the trailer was going to come out.
In the Super Bowl.
In the Super Bowl, and so they pivoted and said, yeah, we can't do that.
Which, the original title was just Deadpool and Friend.
And it kind of strikes me as hilarious that...
We air tomorrow on, the biggest stage
and I remember seeing it and thinking, they nailed this, but, just to think that the day before they were going in a completely different direction.
That would not still have been as hyped if it was Deadpool and Friend.
Right. It's that was the move that they had to make.
final thoughts on this movie for you, whether it's a rating or personal opinion or just what do you want to say? What do you want the people to know about this?
I would say that if you're worried about the spirit of Deadpool being altered in any way in this movie because it's Disney or because it's now Marvel Studios and they've got to like incorporate it, or hey, it seems like they might be trying to do too much fan service here, you can push those concerns aside, sit down and watch this movie. You're going to have a great time.
Absolutely.
Plain and simple. Mm-hmm. Don't overthink it.
No.
There's not a lot of people that I think would go in and like the first two movies and not enjoy this experience.
Like we talked about, I don't think there's any horrible or bad movies in the MCU, but I do come out and think, was this worth going to the theaters to see? Just because going to the theaters these days is a bit of an experience, both cost-wise and just theaters have changed since the pandemic. Absolutely worth seeing in the theater, in my opinion, whether you're in a theater that's packed like we were in, or you're by yourself. Worth going, worth the money. You don't have to get the popcorn bucket if you don't want to. Again, I'm not a big popcorn bucket guy, but worth going to see. Again, I love this character, and I think this was a great end to his trilogy. I have a feeling we will see him more coming up in the next stages of
the
MCU,
for sure.
Which that is basically our next topic, because as people were talking about the opening weekend of Deadpool and Wolverine, we all thought that was going to be like the biggest news item related to MCU.
Yeah.
But San Diego Comic-Con happened. I totally forgot it was going on, and
I didn't.
I know.
So, and for further context, up until probably, I'll say Avengers 2, but it's probably wrong. Marvel Studios have been in Comic-Con every single year hyping up projects because, they weren't always the powerhouse that they were. Mm-hmm. And then at a certain point, they were like, we don't need them anymore. We're not going to do this every single year. They started doing their own thing occasionally.
That's right.
But every time that they decide to go to Comic-Con, and be at Hall H, it is an event, because some years they're announcing a full slate of movies, some years they're just hyping up upcoming projects, and this is a year, and I think it's been 2 years since they've been there, so like this is a big year.
Yeah.
There's been we can talk about it in other episodes, but there's been a lot of discourse about the direction of things, and so a lot of hype was going into this weekend.
And they did not disappoint.
No.
The big announcement that just broke the internet and every single person who even relatively pays attention to Marvel, Doctor Doom is officially going to be the next main antagonist. I think we all kind of knew that that's where they were going, because they were pivoting, kind of from Kang with the whole, why can't I think of his name? The guy
will come to us.
Shifting away from that actor, and at first we thought they were going to try to save that and just recast
Jonathan
Majors, thank you. Recast Jonathan Majors, but there's plenty of other ways you could go. There's plenty of other Marvel antagonists. So Doctor Doom was where they were going to go. We kind of knew that. But Doctor Doom is going to be played by Robert Downey Jr. This is official. He was in Hall H in the robes and the mask, and he took off his mask, and he's like, here I am. I'm going to be Doctor Doom. This broke the frickin'. I follow so many Marvel and nerd content creators on TikTok and Instagram, and
I turn on my notifications for weekends like this because the news comes in fast, and I thought it was a joke. I was like, I had to make sure it wasn't one of the satirical pages, because unfortunately there's too many of those these days. Mm-hmm. And then I'm seeing it from sources that I trust and that I see all the time.
So this is a pretty big announcement. So what's going on is, now he has historically been a main antagonist, specifically in like Fantastic Four stories, and we do know we are getting a lot more Fantastic Four. We have a Fantastic Four debut, I'd say MCU debut coming up, and
we have a movie coming out.
That's only like 3 months away.
Next year.
Is it next year?
They're filming now. So the movie's supposed to release next year.
Okay.
We do have 4 movies slated for next year, and I believe it is the 3rd or 4th, because the first 2 we know, Captain America and Thunderbolt. So it's one of the last 2 of the year.
I'm really excited about that. I don't know about you. I feel like that cast is beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so Doctor Doom is set to appear first in Avengers Doomsday, set to air in 2026, and then it says he will also play a significant role in Secret Wars, set to come out in 2027. That's the background. I did not have much else for this because I wanted to just let you air your reactions and me air my reactions and just discuss this because I've kind of seen it all over the board. Although I feel like I will say I've mostly seen negative reactions to RDJ being announced as Doctor Doom.
I've seen kind of 50-50. I think so. Here's the problem: the internet wants answers right away, and
of course,
there was a time in Marvel cinematic history when we didn't get answers right away, and people were satisfied with that, and were satisfied in waiting for more information. Because, if this date stands, we are about 2 years away from this movie, which means we're probably not going to get all the answers that we want about this iteration for at least a year,
right?
If we're lucky. We're gonna get that information. So whether it's a Tony Stark character, whether it's actually Doctor Doom, like the actual Doctor Doom, or those kinds of things, everybody wants to just speculate. I think what you have to focus on is how do you feel about Robert Downey Jr. coming in and taking the helm here. I think obviously it's a flashy move, right? He's now an Academy Award winner. He won for a very acclaimed role in Oppenheimer. He is a big personality, a big face in Hollywood.
Yes.
He's a big draw. A lot of people go to movies because of him. Obviously, a big part of that is Marvel. I think what they decided is that they wanted to go with the big guns that they had ridden with in the past. I think the other big announcement that is fairly big, but maybe not being as focused on right now, is that the Russo brothers are back as well.
Yes.
They are directing the next two Avengers movies.
Yes, which love that. That's
so that pairing, that unity of Robert Downey Jr. with those two back in the helm. That's a big part of why the hype's gonna grow here. I think the interesting thing about it is we obviously have history with him in this universe as a very flawed character, but a protagonist, right?
Yes.
Having him come back as an antagonist in some form, I think, is a very interesting thing to consider. It will be a very interesting dynamic. A lot of people aren't going to be satisfied till they know more about how this is going to work, because we're in the multiverse right now. So I think a lot of people are saying, oh, it's definitely going to be a Tony Stark, or there's, so while those things are maybe not going to be settled and that won't be enough to satisfy a lot of people's concerns, I do think it is an exciting sort of time, because I think a lot of people were saying it'd be really cool if we get Robert Downey Jr. back. It'd be really cool if we get Chris Evans back. Get some of these characters back. Get some of that energy back. Well, they're doing it.
Yes.
They're doing it. We joke about how far they plan ahead, but this is a big plan that they've come up with in the last year, and they're showing us their cards.
Yes.
And I was telling people recently that, you can't deviate again.
No,
these movies are coming out in 2 and 3 years. You're probably finishing up script right now and laying groundwork for filming. You're stuck now. You've got to execute. So now we're gonna see how they execute. And I don't think you bring back Robert Downey Jr. for a half-ass effort. I think he's gonna bring it. Everybody else that's coming into this movie, I think they're gonna bring it. This is their time to. These event films, these Avengers films, they don't disappoint.
And I think I'm kind of in the same boat in that I feel like the main criticism I've heard is that people are just worried that this is going to ruin the legacy of Tony Stark and Iron Man and everything we've worked towards, or he's worked towards up until this point. And I get that concern, but I think, and I had that initial reaction, I feel like, too, and then I started to think about this, and I was like, look, Robert Downey Jr., at this point in his career, he doesn't need to do any movie he doesn't want to do.
Exactly.
And I feel like he's very much like Harrison Ford, I've heard, is like this too, in that if a role doesn't make sense to him, he just doesn't do it. Or he'll push back with the directors or, whoever's writing the script.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think is I think we need to focus more on the fact that RDJ agreed to do this. And I don't think it was literally as simple as him getting a phone call and getting asked a yes or no question, him saying yes. I think it was well, tell me how, or tell me XYZ, and where is this going, and what's the ultimate goal here, and whether he was okay with it right off the bat, or was like, we're going to need to tweak some things if you want me to do this. They all ended up agreeing on something, and now, like you said, they're going full speed with it, and I don't blame them for going full force with this.
I think this was a big pivot for them because
Yes.
I do think he was going to come back in some capacity, and I think it was likely just to help out in possibly Secret Wars and possibly even number 5 when it was either Kang Dynasty or now Doomsday.
Yeah.
I think this is a bit more of I'll say extreme pivot.
Yes.
That sounds bad,
No,
but like I think they're just thinking really, really big right now.
Yes.
Because I can't imagine they hadn't had a talk with him already about like, if we brought you back, what would that look like? And I'm sure those talks initially, probably whether it was a couple years ago or this year, was probably more along the lines of like, you know, how would we bring back Tony Stark? Because they're in this era of the multiverse that's gonna end eventually.
Yes.
And so while they're in it, it's like, how do you play around with these characters, these relationships, these storylines? And then, I mean, they just did it. They've done it several times. They just did it with Deadpool Wolverine. They did it in No Way Home.
Yeah.
You can play with the different legacies of characters without ruining the storylines.
Yeah.
You can even enhance them, honor them, and potentially continue them down the road. We had 3 different iterations of Spider-Man, and like you can honestly say each version was honored. So much so that people want to get Amazing Spider-Man 3, and they want more Tobey, and we're gonna get more of our current Spider-Man too. But I guess I don't like the discourse that you're gonna ruin characters.
Yes, no, I agree.
Because you're bringing either the actor back or the characters back. It depends on the story.
Yes,
That's the main thing.
I agree. I am excited for this ultimately. Like, I do like the idea of Doctor Doom being the next antagonist.
We were all waiting.
And I like that, you know, it plays really nicely. Timing will be nice with the Fantastic Four movie. I feel like we might even see, like, I feel like I'll be really excited for the post-credit Fantastic Four scene.
Oh,
because
my goodness.
This is not this hasn't said anything about Doctor Doom being in that movie, but he is one of their main antagonists, and I feel like they will be either way involved.
They'll be linked somehow.
Yeah, they'll be linked somehow in these
inevitable.
Avengers movies or in the story. So somewhere they're gonna collide, or they're gonna interact. Even though I do know that they're also dealing with a Galactus storyline, or they're going to be involved with that as well.
I know. So people had been connecting the dots with Fantastic Four as recently as last year. We had like a chance to get some sort of loose confirmations of who were going to be in those roles. I think it was officially confirmed at Comic-Con.
Yes, of course.
Even though we've known for a couple months that we were going to have Vanessa Kirby, and then obviously
Pedro Pascal.
And then I'm forgetting the names of I always butcher his name, but like he's in The Bear, and
oh shoot,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I can find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a powerhouse cast.
Yes.
And we're finally, so they've kind of introduced this concept of them. They're in a different universe. Yes. It's sort of like a retro futuristic universe, like almost like they're like in the, I want to say they're in the 60s, but that civilization, that world has advanced a bit faster than ours, to the point where things are like looking more like advanced than us. So there's some cool things going on there. I just like the tone of what we're hearing.
Seems like they're kind of combining this with Mutants now, because I mean, Kevin Feige did come out. That was another announcement. I don't know if it came out at San Diego Comic-Con, but Feige did announce recently that Phase 7 of Marvel is officially the Mutant Saga. Now, that's not for a little bit yet. Like, the first piece isn't until 2028 if we're on time. So that is 4 more years away, which is crazy. With a Scarlet Witch project, not a lot of details on that. But now they're pretty leaning heavily towards mutants. I think Deadpool and Wolverine was kind of the first, like...
they've been dropping
dropping
hints.
the water with that now.
They've dropped hints in the Marvels.
Mm-hmm.
We have Scarlet Witch, obviously, who's heavily involved in the mutant world in the comics. Quicksilver we had for a minute there.
For a minute, yeah.
I'm forgetting about Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel, and I don't know how many people have watched that series, but she's a mutant
and she
in
was
the comics as well.
she was in the Marvels.
And
the Marvels is set to get a sequel. Who's all getting a sequel in Phase 7?
So these are a bit more of projections because they're really trying to iron out Phase 6.
Yeah.
So currently for Phase 6 there are 4 movies, and I speculate there's probably gonna be like 6 or 7 because we're gonna probably, this is my sort of projecting from what I've heard, but we're probably gonna get a Spider-Man movie mixed in there. That seems likely.
I would think so.
And I think we're getting Shang-Chi. So
yeah, that's right. We need Shang-Chi.
So Phase 6, we're getting 2 Avengers movies a year apart. We're getting Blade, allegedly.
Nice.
And then we're getting the Fantastic Four. I think we're also getting Spider-Man. I think we're getting Shang-Chi. And I think those are the only 6 movies before we end this saga.
Are we getting anything specifically related to the Young Avengers?
Maybe. They teased
I
don't know that we get it before the multiverse ends. I would think they would want to do it before the multiverse ends, but
I'm just trying to figure out. They announced this antagonist now. Who's gonna fight him? That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you got the Fantastic Four. Now, I was checking because of partially related to a scene in Deadpool, which is really more of a joke than anything, so it's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
I was checking just before you got here. I was checking the end credits of Thor: Love and Thunder, and it does say Thor will return.
Yes.
So I'm sure he'll come back. And the reason why I was checking this, because I was scrolling through Instagram. I obviously follow Ryan Reynolds because he is amazing. I'm in love with him. And when was this? One day ago, he posts a screenshot from that scene in Deadpool that I'm talking about. And he captions it, "I know why Thor was crying, and I can't unknow it."
I think he's being legitimate too. I do. Yeah. Because like we said, I think it's more likely that we get more Deadpool than we get Wolverine.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be involved going forward. So why not have sort of like a teaser of what might come?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I'm looking at this list that you have here.
Yeah.
And we're talking about moving into the Mutant Saga. And we have, what do we have here? We have 14 titles. I think what I want to highlight here
over 3 years
is that at least half, and I think it's a little bit more than half, are mutant related.
Yes. So they are really leaning into this.
When you told me that we were going to talk about mutants, one thing I thought about right away is that as we started the MCU, I think it was very intentional on the part, this first lineup that they made, there were no mutants involved. None of the original 6 were mutants.
That's a good point.
You move on as we sort of work through Phase 2, and the only mutants that were sort of introduced were Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver.
Yeah.
Okay? So then a little bit of progression there, but just like a little teaser, not much.
Yeah.
And then Phase 3, I mean, it's 11 movies long. There was a lot of addition of characters, of just ideas and things like that. But the theme there is they really expanded the lineup. They really started to say, all right, we're starting to move in this area of these superheroes that are enhanced genetically. Like they like it's something that they started with, and not something that created, or all these different ways that superheroes get made.
And they didn't just drop them in and say here they are, because is Civil War in Phase 3?
Yes, it is.
Because that's whole story, not whole story, but a big part of that story is like, what are we going to do with Wanda? Are we okay with Wanda? What's the deal? And I love that they touch on that discourse. Just the way that they've tackled all of those issues.
Yeah.
Not just been like, these are your superheroes now. It's like, but are they? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this.
Well, right. And so you bring up Civil War, and they're already grappling with those decisions of like, all right, we have these people, and they're on a team, and they're fighting the good fight for the world.
Yes.
But like, what if they got a little out of control? And like, how do we like regulate them and police them? And are we okay with all right, so we've got Captain America. He's just got like these enhancements to make him stronger, faster, and this intelligent guy. But we got Wanda. She's kind of a wild card.
Yeah.
She has these powers you can't really quantify. Sometimes it's hinted that she really doesn't have a great handle on them at that point in her journey. You know, and then you've got Vision, who's kind of, I mean, a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
He has some physical abilities. He also has some mental capabilities. You know, you're going down a rabbit hole of they were trying to like poke at this superhuman registration thing, right?
Yeah,
like if this is how we quantify your abilities, well, we have to control / keep tabs / regulate you. And then they kind of tabled it because things got kind of crazy after that movie for obvious reasons. I'm not saying they're going to reintroduce that in the next Captain America movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't come up again because of the two characters going to be featured. Thunderbolt Ross, who was heavily part of that whole Sokovia Accords situation.
Right.
And then Sam Wilson was there, so he got to see that unfold.
Yes.
So, like, I feel like it's going to come up again.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, again, we're moving towards mutants and that sort of discourse of, are you for, are you against?
Yes.
You know, and we're going to have to talk about, like, the themes there because
yes.
when you talk about mutants and that world and how that was written, it has parallels to a lot of really heavy real-world topics,
Absolutely.
as we know. But,
Yes. Yeah, so the proposed components of Phase 7, so the Mutant Saga, the ones I think are most notable or most excited about, I would like to see more. I would like to learn more about that Scarlet Witch project, especially after seeing the trailer for Agatha, which is coming out. And, you know, the main reason that this is becoming a series, or the way they're setting it up, is they're saying that, they just say that Scarlet Witch isn't around anymore, which is why Agatha can break out of that spell and go and do her thing. They don't really specify what that means, so people are like, is she dead? Is she just tired? Did she just kind of decide Agatha can leave and do her own stuff, and if she gets out of control, she'll deal with it later? So we don't really know what's going on. I'm excited to see that a little bit. There's something that's just called Wolverine based on the logo. It looks like it might be something animated. It looks like it might be a movie, or at least it didn't have the Disney Plus logo over it. So there's going to be a Beast Disney Plus series. That I think would be cool. There's some sort of Jean Grey project. Not super thrilled for that, I don't think, just because I'm like, what more can we do with... leave Jean Grey alone. Leave her alone.
I think there's the fact that they went through two different iterations.
They went through two different iterations.
Like the Phoenix storyline.
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of people have reservations about that. Here's the thing about... It all depends on the lineup, the roster, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the key here.
Yeah.
We have had two iterations, but there was overlap in those two iterations of characters. Obviously, Professor X and Magneto being a big highlight, Wolverine being a big highlight. They had Jean Grey and Cyclops and things of that nature. They just had a very successful unveiling of their animated series on Disney Plus, right?
True, I've heard really great things about that. I
think the real key is who do they decide to highlight? And then you've kind of put on here a couple of these look like they might be series. So, like, are they going to maybe do a couple individual series, but the X-Men will be more of a team? Or will there be a couple more individual movies as well? It's just kind of fascinating what direction they decide to go with that.
At the last component of this saga, according to this list, is just something called X-Men.
X-Men, yeah.
Don't know what that is or what that's all about. I'd be curious.
Do you think it's possible... I'm just going to say it.
Go for it.
It's going to sound very derivative. But do you think it's possible they're going to try and do more like singular character projects and then have the X-Men be Avengers style movies? Dare I say?
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
That would be...
Because like the X-Men movies were always featuring a lot of different people.
Yes. I guess it's possible. I think that'd be just so interesting just because there have already been so many X-Men movies. But I mean, that being said, the Infinity Saga is, 30 movies. So that could be a move if they really want to lean into this mutant stuff.
Because that can be kind of exhausting in the sense that when you're already starting off in this ensemble where I think X-Men, historically you're usually dealing with like 5 or more characters right away, and that's tough to do. And they did it quite well in the first series. You know, like when you talk about the number of people in that movie, you know, you look at the MCU. We did have the Guardians, and that was a trilogy where it was featured 5 people, but that more people got added as we went along. So I mean, it's not impossible to do a movie or series that way. But like since it's been done several times that way already, I'm just interested to see if they would go a different direction.
That would be very interesting. I don't know how I would feel about that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not upset with with how this pivot they're taking overall with Doctor Doom and kind of mixing the multiverse in with the Mutant Saga, or you know, cutting off the multiverse and going right into the Mutant Saga. I think there's a lot of potential here, but like I said, I think with a lot of these components not necessarily being confirmed yet, or
can I ask you a Mutant Saga question?
Of course.
What's your? I guess what would you like to see in terms of what would you hope they would focus on with a fresh take on this? So what's key for you?
That's a really good question, because I mean, you know, I feel like the original X-Men trilogy, you know, I feel like it's just all about them trying to be accepted and trying to live with the humans. So I mean, I guess they could take another hash at that. I don't know what I'd like to see. I think, what do you want to see? Well, you tell me.
Well, I think the big thing would be to balance things out a bit more, which it sounds really like it sounds easy in principle and really hard to execute, but it got a little and this is going to sound like I'm bashing, but it got a little Wolverine heavy. Yes. Not just Wolverine heavy. It started to really tilt towards, I think, a couple characters. And I think what I like about something like the Guardians is everybody gets their chance to shine. And as the movies kind of progress, it's sort of like continuing to rotate throughout each character. And not just shoving one sort of into the background and letting them just, like, do something small every now and then. Yeah. I think that would help, especially if you're going to have a lot of different characters. That's one thing about X-Men that's always tough. If every movie you bring in some new characters. So like, how are you going to give everybody a chance to shine? Right. One thing that I ultimately sort of would complain about is that, like, if you look at like First Class and you look at Days of Future Past, when we run into, I think I said the wrong 2 movies. When you look at Days of Future Past and then you look at Apocalypse. Quicksilver is featured in a very specific way each time, and that's all you really get. He's just sort of like fades, you know, like he gets his really cool, speedy, fast-moving scene, which I'm not saying that, like, but like, let's like not just like lose momentum after he does that. Like, there's other ways characters can be featured and highlighted without just like focusing on what they do best in a given scene or as part of a team.
That is a good point.
You know, and that's the challenge of the writers and the producers to like see how to do that properly, I guess. But then just going back, kind of backing up to the main point, like I think picking the roster that you start with is critical. And then, like, how do you balance out these personalities? I would say Marvel's done a really good job of doing that in general with, like, Avengers films and just overall as the films have gotten more complex and more characters are part of each of these films. So I would love to see them really work hard to do that well. And I think that will make for better overall X-Men properties.
Would you like to see the Professor again, or do you think we should put that to rest?
I think it's hard to do it without him.
I agree.
I guess if you're asking me yes or no, I would say yes. But we're going to see him again in some iteration.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, of course, you talk about that. There's always going to be the Magneto, Professor X, like, back and forth, right? That's a critical relationship. There's a lot of critical relationships in X-Men.
Yes. And
you certainly don't have to have it push everything else aside. I think they can all live in tandem. They're building up to it slowly.
And I do want to see, that is something I would like to see is them. I feel like they haven't never really like hashed that out a ton. Like I know Beast becomes like an ambassador basically for them.
Yeah.
But I feel like we never see him sit down and talk about
We
stuff.
never got really much Beast after, like, again, character fading, sort of being brought back, being highlighted very briefly, like.
But I feel like these things need to be addressed, especially because, I mean, I don't know where they're going to take this storyline because it hasn't come up, and I don't know if you'd call these characters mutants, but we still have to deal with, like the Skrull. The Skrull are still on Earth.
Right.
Even after, what was that? Secret Invasion. Secret Invasion, not Secret War. So it's like there's things we got to work out on Earth, and definitely. I would like to see some of that the wheels turning, and not just a big fight, and then look, we're all friends now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Lasting consequences from some of these interactions, influencing other characters. It's fascinating, and that's why they're taking their time with this. That's why they really have to decide, because again, with something like this, once you start charting the course, you got to build off of what you're doing, and you can't just keep pivoting with this big roster of people, and they're kind of their shared story of being mutants.
I do think there's a lot of potential. I think I don't think people need to be getting like, hey,
Lydia,
go back to laying under the table. My dog has been laying under this table the entire time, by the way. Now she got excited because she heard another dog in the hallway. Anyway, assuming she lets me talk now, you can let me talk. I don't think that people should. They joke, they stab at this in the Deadpool movie. This is not a spoiler, but there's a line where Deadpool basically welcomes Wolverine to the Marvel Universe and immediately follows that up with, "You're joining at a bit of a low point," which I think is hilarious.
So many great lines.
I think a lot of people are kind of sick of this multiverse, or it hasn't, they don't like it for whatever reason. And so I think they're kind of losing faith, or like basically saying that Marvel is on its way out. I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot of potential coming up, especially with Doomsday and Secret Wars. Those are for sure going to be fantastic. And even some of the immediately coming up stuff, like Captain America, I feel like can safely say is going to be awesome. What else do we have coming up between there? We have...
So next year is Thunderbolts, Captain America, and then...
Thunderbolts I really hope is good.
Fantastic Four.
I really hope Thunderbolts is good. I think Fantastic Four will be good as well. So I think, we have some stuff coming. Whether or not... Blade. Again, allegedly.
Right. Until it goes in production, there has to be an asterisk there. You have to be careful of that one. It's from everything I understand, it's a script thing. Yes. I think they want it to be its own thing, but they want it to have the same sort of reverence that the original trilogy had.
Fair. So yeah, even if we are at a low point right now, which I don't know if I'd even necessarily agree with, I think wherever we're on an upturn now, and I think Deadpool and Wolverine was a catalyst. I need to go see the movie again and process it again. Is there anything else really going on right now in the universe? There's no real series going on right now.
I kind of want to get into this next subject you have here and answer that question at the same time. I think they're related. So, I think we've been talking a lot about how things have gone since Endgame.
Yes.
I think they changed their approach. They've made some adjustments with how things have gone in the beginning. I think I have to bring up that there's been two major events that have kind of shaped how things have gone. Yes. Obviously, we had COVID and we had the writer's strike.
Yes.
I think COVID halted things completely and made some changes happen there. And then I think obviously the writer's strike will always have a detrimental effect on just content coming out in general.
Yes.
Because no matter how much we love these movies, writers are important, and I don't think that gets highlighted enough.
Yes.
Sometimes I avoid movies because I see writers that are involved. I'm not gonna lie, and maybe that's unfair. No. I joke, but that can make an impact.
That's a debate we could talk about. We should get into that at some point because that reminds me of a friend of mine. He refuses to watch Top Gun movies because of Tom Cruise being such an outspoken Scientologist. And I've gone back and forth with him on that of like,
Yeah, we can definitely talk about
I don't know if that's
like,
necessarily fair.
the
But so we'll
differences
circle
there.
back to that. That's a really good point. So, but back to,
Yeah.
writers and COVID.
Yes. So Infinity Saga is over now.
Yes.
And I think a big thing about what we're going through now with the Marvel Universe is that I do think in general people have gotten less patient. Just in general.
Oh, absolutely.
People rush into decision making a lot faster when it comes to the content to take in. We have hindsight now, and you look at that era leading up to Endgame. It's complete now, so we can go back and look and see they did this way and did that way.
Yeah.
We're in the midst of a new one, and we want to judge everything so quickly and say this isn't gonna impact events going forward, and this has no connection to what's going on. And it's just like, I don't think we're gonna know the full scope until it's over, and that's not a satisfying answer for a lot of people. But it's like the reality, because I can remember when Guardians came out, and there was less excitement than most of the other properties, but there was interest, and then it was a really, really good movie.
Yes.
Really well received movie,
The original
well
Guardians,
done. A lot of love for these characters that people didn't really know about. But then there was, I heard the whispers of like, yeah, but why does this matter? Like, why should we care? How does this? Because all the other properties had been Earthbound. They're heroes that we knew a lot about, right? Now, if you remember in that movie, we did get our first real glimpse of Thanos.
Yes.
So like that was a direct connection that I think they made on purpose to say they're gonna matter.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But I guess the point I'm trying to make there is that like we can't fully judge everything that's happening with this current era of movies until it's complete. We have to take each movie for what it's worth and what it is in the moment. And those connections are going to happen. And then we'll be able to look back and kind of see. So like on that subject, I kind of want to preach patience. And I know that's hard for people to hear. We're almost 30 movies in and people are just kind of like, well, you know... Also, there's the whole discourse about going back and having to watch all this content, and there's nothing we can do about that now.
Yeah,
we've started this journey. We've gone down that rabbit hole. The content's there if you want to take it in. If you haven't already, great. If you don't, you might be a little lost at some points, but it's not going to be completely foreign to you. Like I think each movie does a good job of establishing where the character is in that moment and what's going on with them in that movie, but not necessarily giving you every single note on their journey, because that's hard to do in every individual movie.
My favorite example to point out in that vein is Ant-Man. First of all, I love the first Ant-Man, but when it came out, I feel like people maybe assumed it was more of just a comedy, and maybe assumed it wouldn't even play that big of a role at all.
Especially because it came out after an Avengers movie.
Especially because it came, after an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
The technology that relates to Ant-Man's story and that whole arc is literally what saved the universe.
Exactly.
Now, yes, Tony Stark had to take it and do his Tony Stark magic with it, but...
It had to be introduced.
It had to be introduced.
It had to be part of the universe.
It took it took two Ant-Man movies to get there, and then I guess three if you include Infinity War.
Yeah.
But that's literally that's how that solution came to be. I'm gonna do a real quick sidebar. You were talking about the Infinity Saga,
yes,
and like people, kind of sometimes going, I just don't get it. I don't know how this all plays into it. The only thing I could think about was to gently touch on the Jared and Kobe lore. We met through his now ex-girlfriend, and Kobe and I briefly lived together while they were dating, and she had not seen any Marvel movies ever, but we were coming up on Infinity War. No, we were coming up on Endgame, and you were prepping her to see it by watching all the movies.
She volunteered, by the way. This was not forced.
She agreed. No, she agreed. Yeah. She did agree.
We put a plan in place.
Yes, put a plan in place. Every day I came home, they were on the couch watching a new Marvel movie. And then, one night, I don't know how far you guys were into it at this point, into the movies, but all three of us went to Fuddruckers, which is not there anymore, I don't think. That
No.
Fuddruckers in Bloomington.
May it rest in peace.
May it rest in peace.
I miss it already.
It was us three
I do remember that.
at dinner at Fuddruckers, and we're having a conversation about Marvel. I don't even know what we were talking about, but probably just whatever movie you guys were on in the story and whatever. And you went up to go to the bathroom, so it's just me and her.
Oh, I know where you're going with this now. I remember now.
You went up to go to the bathroom, and it's just me and her. They're chatting and eating, and I'm trying to continue the conversation. I do not get very far because she slams her hand on the table and just goes, "Jared, I fucking hate Marvel." I'm like, "What?" And she's like, I don't get it. They're in space and they're fighting aliens and I don't understand, and there's stones." I am just like, when you came back, I was just trying so hard to not die of laughter, but I'm like, I can't tell you, like, at least not right then and there. Like, I'm not
I
gonna
found out later.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Directly and indirectly.
So like the too long didn't read story is that, you know, in that divorce I took Kobe. Basically.
Yeah, and again, we want immediate gratification. You can't have it.
Nope.
Like, sorry.
Sorry.
There are post-credit scenes that happened in Infinity Saga. They didn't pay off for years.
Yes.
And most of them have. And the ones that haven't are still floating there for payoffs down the road, too. The thing about doing those is that sometimes there is an immediate plan of action to pay off something, and sometimes we have to wait.
Yes.
That's okay. What I think is important to highlight about Phase 4 and 5 right now is that things have been changing too, so they're still working through how they want to set things up.
Yes.
We're in the midst of Phase 5. Phase 4 is over. You can argue about it as much as you want. We have the movies, we have the content. Phase 5 is happening now. They are literally forming Phase 6 to have what they hope will be a resounding end to this whole multiverse saga.
Yes.
And, you know, I think based on their track record, we should trust that.
Yes.
Because one thing I don't think people appreciate enough about Marvel is that they work really hard to put out a movie that it entertains you, but it makes sense and it helps to advance the plot.
Yes.
Even if you don't understand right away why it's advancing the plot.
Yep.
You can go back now to every movie in Infinity Saga and say, this is how that movie advanced the plot. And then, again, people argue about how much they enjoyed that particular movie, but you can't say that none of them were nonsensical.
Yeah.
They don't do that. There's an intent with everything that they do. With that being said, they've had to make a lot of changes. So there's some trepidation, but also excitement about the next couple movies. And then we just talked about Avengers 5 and 6.
Yep.
Like, we have another year where we're going to get a bunch of movies that are going to move the story forward, and we might be even more excited at that point.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So that is exciting because no matter how much they announce things and change things, like, they always have the chance to make it more exciting, to make it better, to make it like to bring it all together even better than it did before.
Yes.
So that's what gives me hope, and that's what gets me excited, frankly.
Absolutely. Oh gosh.
Be patient, people.
Exactly.
I'm telling you,
patient.
just
be patient. Let them cook.
Yes.
Let them cook. It's gonna be good. No reason to give up hope. And yeah, I think you're right. It's totally a symptom of us just needing everything right now. Needing to know everything right.
I totally understand because I mean I have it too, frankly. You know, when they announce Infinity War and Endgame, like, come on, we want it now. You know, we're like painting the path in our heads, like, this is how it's gonna go. Or
even just this RDJ, you know, the Doctor Doom, Robert Downey Jr. thing.
Right.
People who are not happy with it, I think it's because they have that uncertainty, like. But how? How is this going to play out? How are you going to do this? Like, if you tell me right now and I like it, I'll have that. But
that's the beauty of it. We have to wait. We have to let some seeds be planted.
Yeah.
We're going to get some trailers. We're going to get some first look images. We're going to get, you know, some story beats. And then it's going to be like, all right, more excitement. Oh, my God, this is happening.
I think it would be really cool. As much as I feel like it would be kind of, you know, mimicking Avengers the original Avengers a little too much. I think it would be really cool at the end of Fantastic Four in the post-credit scene to see like an appearance of Doctor Doom in some capacity.
I would not. That comes out next year. I would not be surprised
right?
if
Like,
that's exactly what
little,
happens.
just a little.
Because
something.
again,
Just a little something.
he is in his essence a Fantastic Four character,
antagonist,
a villain.
and, yeah.
Like I am sure that there will be a link made. I need you to introduce this next one.
Okay, wait, where are we at? Where are we at? Oh, yes. Okay, so I put this question down, not knowing how excited you were going to be about it, but it seems like you're excited, so let's talk about it. Going off of how Marvel appears to be abandoning certain ideas and proposed arcs from Phase 4 and 5, while they're trying to find their footing after the epicness of Infinity Saga. Does this mean that people hate the multiverse? Do people hate? I feel like it's just been getting a lot of negative reviews as of late. So do people hate the multiverse? What do you think?
Okay, so you're answering a more specific question.
Ooh, okay.
I want to first say to back out of that question.
Back out. Okay.
People have talked about superhero fatigue. I don't think that's a thing. So I want to say, first of all, I don't think there's superhero fatigue. Zooming back in on your specific question, I do think that after what they accomplished with Endgame, expectations were raised.
Okay.
I think a little bit unfairly going into this new phase of movies. And I don't think that's a tough question to answer. I don't think people hate it.
No.
I think there's some fatigue about how it's been executed.
Fair. I do love that you brought up fatigue because I do have a few points. I was just like spitballing. I was like, if they hate the multiverse, why? And I think I just immediately went to fatigue, just because. I mean, let's be real. I loved the Infinity Saga, and you and I were both like saw every movie and every TV series that we needed to see it. We were there. But obviously, a lot of people didn't like that. They like, I want to go to a movie without having to have seen 20 movies before it.
Yeah.
You know, I sympathize with that, but I also like if you're here for the story, like, you know, be here for the story.
Yeah.
Then you step into the multiverse, which is extremely complicated and opens up different kind of like it'd be like like the whole Channing Tatum as Gambit thing. Like some people have no clue that was a thing, so I'm sure they would go to Deadpool and Wolverine and see that and be like, why is Channing Tatum in Deadpool and Wolverine, and also who is this character? So I was like, maybe that's why. I do like that you hypothesize that superhero fatigue is not a thing.
It's about the stories mainly, and the stories I think have been very like diverse in the MCU. I certainly, you look at other superhero movies that come out, whether it's affiliated with DC Universe or just other superhero stories in general. A lot of people say that they're derivative, and I would say that yes and no. I think there is something to be said about, like, we get a lot of origins, we get a lot of exposition in that way. We have to set up a villain. You have to like have the hero struggle and things. So some of those tropes do pop up a lot in these movies, but like the stories themselves are very rich and very different, and I think there's always something new to appreciate there. I think when you talk about the multiverse, I think a lot of people just miss when it seemed like everything was in one universe and that there was less to keep track of.
Yes.
I do want to remind people that we are in the multiverse saga, and in the Infinity Saga, it's named that because of the Infinity Stones, and that was a major plot point, a major part of those movies. But we didn't deal with Infinity Stones or the advancing of that plot in every single movie in that saga.
So true.
And so why should that be true of the multiverse saga? One complaint that I've heard is that, like, okay, like, if you look at the first 4 movies in the multiverse saga, Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man. So 2 of them kind of dealt with maybe some multiversal stakes. 2 of them didn't. Like, why do we need this? Why is this important? again, let's go back to the beginning of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm,
They didn't
mm-hmm.
all deal
No.
with Infinity Stones.
That's a great point.
Like, you have to start somewhere, some of these characters, and some of the movies deal with existing characters in a different struggle. Some of them are origin stories, introducing things. Maybe they're introducing characters and they're introducing the concept of, again, the saga of the things that are going to be important later.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people have sort of just said, yeah, I don't really care about this. So, like, I'm not going to be a fan of it. Versus, I mean, Spider-Man dealt with Doctor Strange and it had portals and different dimensions and how that, like, relates to the overarching narrative. Okay, yeah. And I mean, I just think there's a place for everything that we've had so far, and you can like some less and like some more. But again, back to what we dealt with in Infinity Saga, it's not all going to relate directly. Some of it is indirectly. Some of it moves the plot along slower, and some of it moves the plot along a little faster, and that's okay. I don't think people hate the multiverse. I think a lot of people appreciate certain things that we've gotten because of the multiverse.
Yes.
I know a lot of people. I think Doctor Strange got a lot of varying discourse.
Yes.
In terms of what people liked about it and what people don't like about it.
Right.
But a lot of people love the character, and a lot of people liked some of the elements in that movie.
Yeah.
And they try to do a lot. I will fully admit that there are probably some things they didn't need to do in that movie. But I think it was an overall pretty good movie.
And I think I absolutely agree with everything you said there. I think a lot of it, too, you mentioned after the Infinity Saga, we had a lot of very high, maybe unreasonably high expectations. I think a lot of the current or this recent backlash or negative reviews has also stemmed from a lot of the TV shows more than the movies.
And that's new.
That's new.
That's part of, we maybe won't talk about that enough in the beginning, but we have to deal with that too. That's more content that, like, we're all indirectly signing up for. Like, we have more content in the form of shows now. So that changes things too. Yes. We also have that as well.
And I mean, to be fair, like, I think Secret Invasion is the first one that comes to mind. Yeah, I wasn't super thrilled with it either. But again, that didn't really have to do with the multiverse.
No.
A lot of the TV series haven't really dealt with the multiverse that's coming out.
Does that mean that they have no place?
No.
Exactly.
Again, a few I think we got to wait and see. Like the whole, to go back to that, like, what are we going to do about the Skrulls? I don't know. I hope something. There's definitely potential. There's room for something there.
I love hearing, what are they going to do with the giant celestial in the ocean?
Oh, that one.
Hey, guess what? We're going to find out next year.
That is a good one.
Like, they don't forget about these things.
Just trust the process, people. They know what they're doing. If they could take all those different, 30 different stories and do a fantastic culmination into what was Endgame,
and people cared enough to go because of the buildup. If they had done a terrible job, it would have whimpered.
94% on Rotten Tomatoes, 8.4 on IMDb out of 10. So it's not like it sucked. Like they did a fantastic job with that. Yeah. I don't think people hate the multiverse either. I think you're right. It's just they have such high expectations now.
And I'll even say too, personally, like, I have to tell myself to lower my expectations. Sure. Not because they shouldn't be held to a high standard, but, like, they're not trying to do they're not trying to replicate that every single time they make a movie. No. That's frankly impossible.
Yes.
We can speculate and say it's going to happen again, or they're going to get close to it, or that kind of thing when we were rounding around to Avengers 5. We shouldn't expect that, but it's certainly, like, something we could, like, hope for and sort of want to happen. But, like, there was a time when they were making 70, 80 million open weekend, and that was considered amazing. Yeah. And they would have a really good run with a good story and a good character, and then we would say, great, we liked it, let's move on to the next story. There was definitely, like, a come down from Endgame where I think people did kind of, like, unfairly go off for a couple movies.
Yeah.
I mean, and also we had, again, that was so Endgame happened in 2019.
Yeah, gosh.
If we can even think back to
I remember that time.
Far From Home was right after, and when I say right after, like Endgame was in April, the end of April, and then we had Far From Home in July. So it was like a quick turnaround. We're also recovering. We're still sobbing into our popcorn, trying to recover from this like amazingly emotional but monumental experience. And Far From Home did really well too, to sort of tell the aftermath of this story. With again, it's Spider-Man, so like it's a character that people generally love, and they'd been doing a great job with. And then we had a long break after that, because if you remember, we were supposed to get 2 movies in 2020. I don't have to tell you what happened in 2020, but the world stopped in basically every single way. And everything got pushed back and delayed. And then people were probably a little restless. And again, the last impression of the MCU at that point was this amazing experience of Endgame, and then Spider-Man Far From Home. And then we had Black Widow, which, I'm sorry, I'm going to die on this hill, was a good movie. I'm not saying it was a spectacular movie. I'm not saying it was a game-changing movie. I'm just saying it was a good movie. Leave it alone.
It was a good movie, yeah.
It didn't come out in theaters, by the way. A lot of people hold it against it. There was a whole... we can get into that mess. I would love to talk about that mess, because
next time
that wasn't handled well.
Yeah.
But that's also a part of that discussion, too. But anyway, expectations are a thing that I think poison decisions on things like this.
Yes.
Whether they're too high or too low. And I'm not saying it's easy to have the right level of expectation. I'm just saying that it's a thing that exists that is not great for movies. I think one of the reasons, quick sidebar, I think one of the reasons that John Wick has become such a smashing success is because there were no expectations for the first one. I'm not joking when I say this. There were little to no expectations. People like, this cool action flick. Keanu signed up.
Yeah.
We're not really sure about this plot. It seems kind of cool. He seems like an assassin, whatever. It was low expectations. It was sort of this unheralded property. That movie overachieved. People were surprised and impressed by it. Yeah. They quickly came out with a second one, and the rest is history. And by the way, when I say quickly, I'm not saying like unintentionally. They poured so much good world building into that movie that it has become the powerhouse that it is. So, and again, expectations. What if we'd gone in that movie with these ridiculously high expectations for something we'd never seen before, and we crushed it? Yeah. And then they're like, oh, well, I guess that's it. Yeah. I think we're good.
I do think
expectations.
I do think it would have been worse had the world shut down like immediately after Endgame, and we wouldn't have gotten Far From Home.
Yes, I agree with that.
Because they at least, I mean, they started right away then to touch on, and I loved seeing this, like everything from how is the world recovering from the unblip, and then even just, I mean, gosh, the emotional roller coaster of Tom Holland. Like, everyone wants to know who the next Iron Man is, and is it going to be me, and can I handle that? And oh my gosh, that scene with him and Happy every time gets me. Yeah. So I think that at least gave him something, but then we didn't have anything for a hot minute, unfortunately. Oh my gosh, we have been. I started this late. We've been talking for almost 2 hours. I was hoping we'd get like a good 45 minutes of content, and we are at 2 hours.
Dude, I told you we were gonna be.
I'm gonna be spending so much time editing. This might take a while to come out.
Yeah.
But so, were there any big other points kind of you wanted to hit on here? I know we have those.
I think we can push that for a different.
Yeah. And those are again more of just kind of our overarching theme of again.
Yeah.
We're strong proponents of there are no bad MCU movies, and it isn't just plain black and white. Is the movie either awesome or awful? There's so much. Yes. I think
we're gonna get into that.
We're gonna get into that. I won't even start to throw out names because we'll be here for another 2 hours.
That's gonna be a good probably 20, 30 minutes. I have a lot to say about that. And I think if you listen to everything I have to say, you will agree, maybe even grudgingly, but like
Maybe.
it will make sense.
Yes.
And I think will still validate people's opinions about different movies, which I think is important. But I just think I have very specific opinions, so I'll keep that for next time.
And that's a great, I mean, that next time is also big, up in the air. You know, I have an idea of how often I'd like to do this, and there's plenty of things to talk about. The main thing is going to be, you know, Kobe and I are both extremely busy. We are not content creators. This is something our friends kind of told us, like, hey, you should just do this, and we threw it out there, and we're like, yeah, we could totally do that, and let's start for fun and see where it goes. So we both have, you know, jobs. You are currently also in school, and that's taking up a lot of your time. I am trying to also start. Yeah. I'm also trying to start another podcast as well. So there's a lot going on. Totally unrelated to Marvel, complete left turn. So, but we're gonna try to get these out, you know, because I think again we just enjoy. It's super easy for us. I basically just loosely texted you like, this is what we're kind of going to be talking about, the loose subject, and here's
it looks good, everyone.
Yeah.
It looks real
here's
good.
A few points I'll have. The only complaints I have is that I am waiting on a Deadpool and Wolverine poster to go in that frame. It was supposed to arrive a week and a half ago, and I think there's like some flooding going on across the country, so that palm tree is just the stock photo from when I bought it. It's going to be a Deadpool and Wolverine poster to complete the Deadpool.
I could contribute a poster or two as well.
It's up to you.
I have too many.
I'm probably going to expand a little bit on this as well, but unless there are any last minute thoughts, I was trying to think about how we wrap this up.
Well, I was going to say, I think an awesome thing would be to tease, like, episode ideas that we've had. So,
yes,
like,
actually, that's a good point.
You want to tease one, and I'll tease one?
Yeah, and if you have one, I feel like you're ready. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, so one episode that I think we're definitely going to do at some point is, this is a perfect time to do it because with Deadpool and Wolverine coming out, we have a long break till the next Marvel movie.
Yes.
So what I'd like to do is I would just like to rank what we've gotten so far.
Yes.
I think there'll be some movies we'll dive into and defend a lot, and others will sort of like just touch on a little bit, but just sort of like a ranking of where we think the movies stand and kind of maybe like highlight the top 5 and the bottom 5 and why we think that is.
I think that's a great idea as well.
So
I like that idea.
Stay tuned for that.
I'm gonna tease more generic. I mean, not necessarily more generic, but again, we're not gonna solely. Marvel is gonna be most of what we talk about here. But, like, for example, by the time we do our next episode, House of the Dragon will officially be wrapped up because the finale is in 3 days, which is crazy.
Oh my God.
We're fans of Game of Thrones.
That might be like a 5-hour episode.
We could discuss House of Dragon, Game of Thrones. We could discuss that. We're also going to have a 2-year gap. Not looking forward to that, just because 2 years is a long time.
Looking at you, Stranger Things. Hope that makes the cut.
And I'm a huge Star Wars fan as well. So, I mean, the latest in that space is The Acolyte. I don't know if we need to spend a whole episode talking about The Acolyte, but I think there's been, again, a lot of conversation around the TV shows that they've come out with since the last trilogy of movies. I think it'd be interesting to dive into those. So,
yeah, again, that's actually a great point. We have like a natural Star Wars break, sort of.
Yes.
With, you know, we get a show every now and then, but movie-wise, like, I think they're really reforming the strategy moving forward. So we can talk about that for a while.
So those are some good teases. I think the only thing I'll end on then is I'm going to jump back to Deadpool cameos, actually, really, really quick.
Yes, please.
Just some fun ones. These are not spoilers at all, and you won't actually even notice them, I would say, which is why I like to point them out.
Yeah.
So basically, the entire Reynolds family is in it, and that I mean...
That's right.
Blake Lively does make a cameo. You won't necessarily know it's her, although I feel like you'll know it's her. Blake Lively makes a cameo. Both of their kids make cameos in the movie, which I did not know that one, actually. I love that. I think that's hilarious. And then, of course, everyone knows about Dogpool. That's not a cameo, but I do want to highlight. I did not realize until I saw Ryan do an interview that the dog who plays Dogpool was literally voted like the ugliest dog in whatever country they're from. Like, that's a legit contest and award that they do, and this dog won, and they're like, yes, put them in the Marvel movie. And I just think that's so typical. Like, that screams Deadpool. If that's not, Deadpool.
Yeah, we didn't talk enough about the Dogpool scenes. Those are highlights
scenes,
too.
those are, yeah, you'll like the dog pool scenes as well. Although I heard Ryan Reynolds did not necessarily like filming those because the trainer just had to keep shoving food into his mouth to get the dog to lick him. And it was like not, obviously not very appetizing. So again, I think your first step, if you haven't, is to go see Deadpool and Wolverine, because again, we are transitioning more into a mutant phase, and there will be mutants to come, and I think we will definitely see Deadpool again. Would not be surprised if we saw Wolverine in some sort of cameo fashion, but I would not look for him on the big screen in a movie anytime soon necessarily. But go see Deadpool and Wolverine. It was definitely worth it, and we need to start when we turn off our mics here. We'll probably start talking about when we're gonna go see it again next. So, any last words for our first episode? I think this was overwhelming success.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to everybody who pushed for this.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of people that said, "Oh, you should be doing this, or you should give this a shot." So.
And I don't think we were ever no, it's a terrible idea. We were never like that. But I think for me, it's the fact that we sat down and very easily went through 2 hours and 15 minutes of talking.
Yeah.
On
it was nothing.
Pretty much I had three main bullet points here. We turned that into 2 hours and 15 minutes, and we could have easily kept going. We could have took some tangents
so now
further.
we know how this is going to work.
So yeah, if you're into this sort of thing, buckle up. We're going to try to keep this going, again, pending our schedules. Maybe the release schedule might be a little wonky, but yeah, I agree. Shout out to all of our friends. They know who they are, and they're gonna love to see this, and I can't wait to get off and send them a screenshot of my timer and be like, yeah, so this happened. All right, well, with that's on your left, so we will see you next time,
and we can do this all day.
Oh wait, that's perfect. All right, I like that.
See you next
time, everyone.